Hey, welcome everybody to the CultureWorks live stream series. Quiet quitting and how the best leaders are figuring out a way to combat that and retain their top talent. That's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Chester Elton, and I'm here with my co-author and good friend Adrian Gostek.
Well, thanks, Jess. And I just want to say how intimidating that music was coming in. It was like we were coming back to MSNBC, Decision Central. And I was like, no, we're just talking about how we retain people. And it'll be
The
happy
drama,
hour.
the drama. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's about the article's called The Rebel Leader. So it was kind of dramatic there.
Yeah, and this is the article that you wrote for Forbes magazine or Forbes online. And by the way, if you're not following Adrian, you should go click on that button and click follow. But you talk about how some managers are breaking the rules post-COVID, to retain that top talent and really combat that quiet quitting. So kick us off.
Well, first off, this is something that you and I have, we've taught against for years because it's not about the money. Well, right now, a little bit, it is kind of about the money. Make sure that you are addressing your employee pay. If we have 8% inflation, raising, and we were just talking to a CEO this last few months who's giving everybody a 1% cost of living rise.
Right.
And though their culture does say employees come first. Well, no, they don't. So this is something we don't talk about a lot. We're not compensation experts, but it's just common sense. Make sure you are doing things to make sure your people stay by looking at pay first and foremost in this environment. This may be not something you're going to worry about a year or two from now as much, but right now, take care of your people that way.
Yeah. And by the way, this is not just a North American thing. I mean, that's where we live. It really is global. And I love our global audience. We've got Nahimuddin from India, Iman from Tunisia. We've got a LinkedIn user from Kenya, and our good friend Uwe Tandler. Uwe, welcome to the show from Switzerland.
And Latifa from Sweden. We've got people in Morocco, all over Algeria. Yeah,
Algeria, good. Lexington, Kentucky. Thanks, Jason, for tuning in. So, what are some of the things that the best leaders are doing, Adrian, to combat this quiet quitting? Give us some tips that are outlined so beautifully in your article.
Sure. The idea is, what are you doing to think about more freedom is the word. Now, so are you permitting more flexible hours? Are you giving people a little bit more control in how they do the work? So recently, I was just last week, I was with a big auto company, 1,000 managers giving a speech. And before then, they allowed me to talk to some of the highest producing leaders of these different markets around US, Canada, et cetera. And what they talked about, these highest performing leaders were never talked about their KPIs, their sales goals. They all talked about their people. They said, look, listen to your people. Make sure they have a voice in how they do their jobs. Reward them. Recognize every step forward. It was not what maybe corporate was thinking I would hear, but they were very soft answers, if you will, that was driving some really hard performance. So I think in the hardest times, we have to be softer than we've ever been before.
Yeah, and soft doesn't mean like soft, like I can take advantage of you. Soft, So often when we talk to leaders, they go, I don't, if I'm that flexible, if I'm that kind, are people going to run over me? And we found actually the opposite to be true, haven't we? That it builds great relationships, it builds loyalty, and people, they know you care, and that really goes a long way, doesn't it?
Well, we were talking with when we wrote one of our books, we interviewed the president and CEO of Skanska, right? The big construction company.
Yeah.
At the time they were, building the Oculus in New York, and they were redoing LaGuardia Airport. They had some really tough construction projects. And the CEO told us, he says, it's about freedom now. He says, if you expect people to be here, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, like we were when we started, he says, we're going to be alone. So they've instituted job sharing, work from home. They've instituted all these creative ways to make sure they're appealing to their workforce. And this is a construction company, right? That's not what you would expect, was it?
Yeah. It really is, as you mentioned in your article, take care of your people and results will follow. People more than ever, say, look, you can't just care about me as the worker. I want you to care about me as the person. And, we often talk about this ripple effect that we spend so much time at work. we take that attitude, we take that frustration, or we take that happiness home with us.
No, yeah.
And it's so important for leaders now more than ever, I think, to send people home happy. And it comes back to, does my manager, does my supervisor really care about me?
Well, and this is where we get into the article. You got to really consider the younger generation coming in, Gen Z, and the tail end of the millennials. Anybody in their 20s, they're what we're starting to call the renter generation. This is a generation that does not have the means to buy a house yet, does not have the means to do the things that other generations did. Their buying power has not increased at the rate that Gen X or baby boomers did. And so that's creating a lot of frustration with this generation. And they're saying, look, if I don't have the buying power that I saw mom or dad have, well, then I'm not going to work as hard. I'm not going to be as committed. This is a huge issue that very few organizations are really addressing, is how you get younger people, especially, to commit. And as you just mentioned, you can't get them to commit if you don't show that you're caring.
Yeah. You talk about too about get to know your people, get to know their stories. Why is that so important in this generational
Mhm.
workforce? Why is it important to know someone's story, to get to know them over and above? The old school was leave your personal life at the door. It's
Mhm.
called work for a reason, get to it.
Yeah.
Now you're saying you need to get to know your people. Why?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that we're seeing is that employees are taking their frustrations out often on the supervisor, and whether kind of behind their back or even to their faces. So, who are you more frustrated with? Somebody who is sort of in an ivory tower, closed their door all day, they're in meetings, they're gone, or somebody who is with you working in the trenches, rolling up their sleeves. What we found in our research is the best managers spend about 75% of their time with their people, not with customers, not with the bosses, not with their peers, but working with their teams. And when you start doing that, you start hearing their frustrations, you start hearing more of their stories. I was just doing an executive coaching session with one of my leaders that after 2 years, it was our last session. And he says, what was really amazing, he says, is now this is an engineering leader. He says, a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have done this. He says, but my last meeting before you, I did a one-on-one with one of my engineers, and she spent 10 of the 30 minutes talking about her 18-month-old who was climbing all over the furniture and getting into cupboards. And we just talked about that. And we laughed, and I reminisced about when my kids were that age. And he says, I never would have done that before. But now I realize that kind of connection is vital in building loyalty and building this team that I'm really trying to create.
Yeah, and don't make me just a better worker. Help me become the person I want to be, right?
Mm.
And which dovetails beautifully into another one of your great leaders and what they do as far as this quiet quitting and how do you attract and that is to listen, to
Mm.
be a good listener. So often as leaders, a problem comes up, we want to jump in, solve that problem, you know, dust off to our hands and drop the mic and walk off the stage and say, aren't you lucky to have me as a supervisor, right? Rather than maybe taking a beat, taking that pause and just listening. Is listening a lost art, Adrian?
It's interesting you say that because you both of us were leaders in different corporations over our time, right? Did you ever go to a training that taught you how to listen to your people? No. My dad worked for Rolls-Royce back in the 50s and 60s and 70s in the Midlands of England, and he worked in the aerospace division of Rolls-Royce. He designed little pieces of the big engines that go in the Rolls-Royce engines for Airbus or Boeing's. And he says back in the 50s, he says every single one of us, we went to listening training.
Wow.
He says because he says our engines were very innovative. And he says we were known for creating engines that nobody else could. He says, but you don't create innovation if you don't listen to everybody on the team, from the person who's sweeping all the way up to the CEO. Everybody went to this training; it was mandatory, and I think they did it over and over again. And the idea was, what are we doing in our cultures to make sure we're really listening to each other, not just I listen to you so I can say my thing. No. And we saw this when we worked with Bell Helicopter, didn't we? where the CEO instituted, Mitch Schneider, he instituted a listening culture to create the kind of innovation he was looking for.
Yeah, it is interesting. Those soft skills that are the hard skills, those listening. There's a great question in the chat box here, Adrian. I'm going to see if we can stump the expert here, but he said, there's a fine line between caring and being firm. How do you balance that? Somehow, if you care too much, you cannot also be firm.
Yeah.
We've really found the opposite to be true, haven't we?
Well, it's an important point because, you look at, in the US culture, we have Michael Scott from the Office TV show who, obviously can't be firm. He wants to be everybody's best friend. And when asked, would you rather have your people love you or I think is it fear you? And he says, oh, I want them to be so afraid of how much they love me.
Right.
You know, and, not that great. So there are times where you have to, take your employees aside and correct their behavior. But who do you take criticism better from? Somebody who tears you down all the day or somebody who builds you up and now and then has to correct your behavior? Obviously, the latter. So if you want to create great results and be firm now and then, you have to create a loving culture. It's a little counterintuitive, and that's where the article comes from, is the rebel leader, right? Nobody teaches you this stuff, but to get great results, you have to be a little bit more caring than you've ever been before.
Yeah, I think about those boundaries, and I think that's what the question is about. Is you do have certain boundaries, and you say, "Look, I'm going
Mhm.
to really care about you. I'm going to be really understanding. I'm going to get to know you. We do need to get the work done, and I'm here to help you to get that work done."
Yeah.
And I think once you've got those trusting relationships, and people do know you care, you can get there, faster. So yeah, there is a balance. There's no question about it. But I think when people know that you really do care about them, it makes a big difference. We're almost to our time. This always goes by so quickly. But Adrian, you talk about really the importance of getting people to realize to control what they can control and not worry about what they don't have.
Yeah.
You've spoken so well on this many times that you and I have been together, but I think it begs to give us a minute or two on that. Control what
Yeah.
you can control. It really does lower anxiety and increase
Yeah.
productivity, doesn't it?
We were once in a big insurance company, Chester and I. As we were interviewing this one group that had the highest employee engagement scores, the employees told us, "Look, we're frustrated with this system. We're really frustrated with our workflow, but our managers helped us understand that everybody in the company is frustrated with the workflow and the IT systems, and so she has us focus on quality versus speed. We can't move our claims any faster than anybody else." So we focus in on making sure everything is excellent, how we answer and interact with phones and interact with our clients and customers, etc. And because she had them focus on what they could control, well, then their engagement scores were much, much higher than other groups in the company that were doing the same work. Well, it sounds like such a simple thing, right? Focus on what you can control. But how often do we get off base and we start worrying about all the things we can control? That's where anxiety comes from, right? Worrying about what you cannot control. Help as a leader, bring people back. This is what we focus in here on.
Yeah, I love the comments in the chat, delete people in interactions over processes and tools. People really do matter. And Luis talking about, in manufacturing that they had to show up every day. And it was a great lesson on hands-on leadership, showing up with your people. Well, we're to our time. I hope we can continue the conversation in LinkedIn. I love the interaction in our community. We so appreciate you showing up. And if there's something in this little live session that you like, please share it with your friends. And as we come to the end of the year and our holiday season, we wish you all the best. You'll control what you can control, that you'll have great memories with your friends and families. I brought a little visual aid here, Adrian. In our neighborhood, we've got the tradition of the ugly Christmas sweater contest. I don't know how ugly this is, but I found Santa playing
Oh,
hockey.
no, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, no.
25, of course, my IQ score, which I appreciate. So listen, have some fun this season. Care about your people, find that way to develop those great relationships so that you can combat that quiet quitting, to get those good people working for you, that they can control what they can control, that you listen, that you care. Adrian, I'm going to give you the last word here as we head into the end of the year and this wonderful holiday season by saying, before your closing comments, how much I appreciate our friendship. and our 20 plus years together. You are beyond brilliant, and I'm lucky to have you as a friend.
No, hey, same here. I love working with you, Chess, and thanks everybody for joining us. And yeah, I'll just say, look, this holiday season, we're a couple weeks away from Christmas and Hanukkah, whatever your people celebrate. The point is, your people are expecting you to do something at this point. So whether it's a handwritten note, whether it's visiting them, at their desks, or whether it's giving them a call, thank them for all of the 1,000 things they've done over this last year that you have not known about, because they have. And they've all kept the lights on for you. They've kept the business going. So it's time to say thank you to the people whose shoulders you stand on at this time. And then make sure you take a little time for yourself over this holiday season. Decompress, shut the phones and emails off, and enjoy this holiday. And thanks everybody for joining us.
You bet. Be kind, be grateful, be of service, and have some fun this holiday season. Cheers.